Hi, my name is Matt Montgomery.
I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, and I am a partner in Three-Way Racing. We primarily time running events in the Louisville, Lexington, Bowling Green area of Kentucky. If you're familiar with Kentucky, kind of a triangle right in central Kentucky. We started this business in 2011. You know, the first year we did, 4 races, and the second year we did like 10 races, and we do about 85 events a year now. Everybody keeps talking about this as their slow time, but I'm not sure that we're very slow this time of year. We do races pretty much all year round. We get a little break in January and February. But hey, I'm here just so you know who I am. I also started a little company, Affordable Barricade Services. And we provide barricade for large events, and we sell it and stuff like that. Thought it was a good fit, a good mix, kind of complement, the two kind of complement each other. But I'm here for you guys today and try to, you know, I've come to a lot of these events and people ask a lot of the same questions, and I feel like they get some less than complete answers. So I'm a pretty straight shooter, and I'll tell you how it is. And I may not always be right. I'm probably rarely right, but I'll tell you what we do. I'm kind of an open book. I'll tell you exactly how we do things and the way we do things and stuff like that. When I first contact a race, or a race contacts us about working with them, you know, we like to have kind of a discovery meeting with them and understand why they're wanting to have a race, because we're dealing with a lot of people who are putting on races for the very first time, and we want to help them in as many ways as possible. So, you know, we want to understand, yeah, money's important. Everybody wants to raise money for their event, but it's not always the most important thing. You know, some groups are just wanting to get community awareness of their company, of their charity. It's their community outreach. So I think it's really important to understand the reason that people are having a run, and then understand if there is a history of it, understand the history of it. So we like to ask a lot of questions. Figure out how we can help in the best way, most efficient way, things like that. Contracts. You said you want to talk about contracts, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about all the boring.
Right. So contracts. You know, real world contracts are really only as good as your relationship is with who that contract is with. There's things that you need to do to make that contract more valuable. There again, that's where that contacting and having those discovery conversations with the races, why they're doing it, what they're wanting to do it for, is really important. And understanding what they want and can do and execute on leading up to the race and race day, and what they need you to do leading up to race day, preparation, and on race day. So the better that you can explain, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. That's what I'm going to do for this price. This is what I expect you to do or provide for. So we tell our race directors, it's right in our contracts. It's like, we expect you to do X, Y, and Z. And so that's right up there in the contract. And if they see that in the contract, you know, in January, and the race is in June, and before they sign that contract, oh, wait a minute, no, I need you to do something that we had on their list. Well, you can talk about it then and make sure that it's going to get covered. So we try to include everything that needs to be done and divvy up responsibility, and so that helps. Early on, I had I had a partner in our business, and her husband was an attorney, and that's what he did. It was contracts and stuff like that. So that's the first contract we had, and I think it was like 4 pages long, and it took you about a half a day to read it because you couldn't understand it in the language, and people would call you up and say, well, what does this mean, and stuff like that. So now we have, I think it's 2 pages, and it's very just bullet pointish, exactly what we're gonna do, what we expect them to do, our pricing. We try to be very all-inclusive in our pricing, so we like to give a price and say it includes this, 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 and this. We always have a couple of things, like if you want us to make a course, design a course, if you want us to measure or certify a course, we put some of those things in there as an option. They can just simply check that thing, sign the contract. We email the contract to them in a PDF form. They sign it, they email it back, and we countersign it, send them back a fully executed copy. And we get a deposit at that time to lock in our date. And
How many people are doing deposits? I mean, I think it's almost everybody.
Trying anyway.
Yeah.
And you know, I try to do a lot of things. These are all general. Do we have circumstances that I don't get deposits? Certainly. Most cases, those are events we've been working with quite a while, and I trust them. Haven't got burned yet. Well, no, we did get burned. I did probably the biggest race we ever did. We didn't get paid for. 7,500 person marathon, half marathon, 5K. We had remote start and finish. We had 2 splits out on the course. I mean, it was a big event, and get paid. So even if you have contracts, that kind of stuff can happen.
Did you send a lawyer after him or anything?
So he asked if I sent a lawyer after. You can't get blood out of a turnip. I don't know. That's what we say in the South. I've heard that term before. But, he didn't have it. His story anyway was he had a sick daughter and he was paying for medical bills. And he was taking all the reg money. He didn't pay a lot of vendors. The people who he was a hired race director. He didn't give the company, it was Cummins Diesel Engines was who was putting on the race. They didn't get any of the registration money or very little of it. So he didn't have it. He didn't have anything. So there it was a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, I wish I'd have had it, but even if I had an attorney, I wasn't gonna get it.
Yes, I mean, we've dealt with that. We've had, I mean, I think Bobby had mentioned it's fairly large, like businesses just pulled up or races canceled. And, I mean, the only thing you can do is, I'm sure everybody's heard about this terrible people that, call debt collectors. If you're really pissed at the person, you get a debt collector. You're not going to get any money, but you'll feel a lot better. So, I mean, that's the other thing is that, as you were saying that, what reminds me is that, so we're sharing that we're doing more underwriting of races because of the risk that we're seeing, and that annoys you guys. I literally hear at least once a week, if not twice a week, you guys, payment setup stuff, pain in the ass. I'm like, yeah, I wish we could make it easier for people to steal money from people. And because that's, I mean, you guys can actually physically meet some of these people, which actually, in an underwriting standpoint, at least they're real.
That goes a long way, actually.
Yeah, but so if someone that you don't know asks for a race that's relatively large, let's say like a 2,000 person race, you guys should be thinking the way that we are. In that, what can you do to validate they're a real person? What can you do to find out, have they ever put on races before successfully? And, the tools out there, like, there's tools like Equifax, like, you really want to do that. But the point is that you really want to be careful, like, you're the one putting the money into that, right? If you're buying the chips for them, if you're buying bibs, or whatever services you're providing, and you're paying your people, and then you're hoping that you're gonna get paid afterwards. That's something that, you know, if somebody's from out of town, you've never heard of them, you've never met them, I would spend more time on that.
That's that meeting and that's that discovery, asking them lots of questions. Who are you? Where have you done events? If this is a new event in your area, where have you done events before? I don't go back and check on those things. I like to think that I've got a pretty good sense for judging people. Judging people, that's not a good word. Qualifying people, feeling people out, and I really let my gut dictate that. And so I can get a gut feeling about somebody, and you know, that's better than nothing.
Our big red flag right now is if they put on, if they did 0 or 5 races last year and now they're doing 20 or something like that, and they're in multiple different cities, you know, they're going all over the country or in large areas, that's our big red flag right now.
Because that's really hard to scale up.
Yeah,
like that.
because, I mean, you guys know, like, I mean, it's not that easy to put on one race, much less 20. And so when you're having that kind of discussion, the easy way to do a reference, call the other timer in the other market that said who did his race. Find out when you got paid, how you got paid. Was this guy, you know, did he show up at the race and, you know, was completely disorganized? I mean, you can get, like, a lot of information because if a timer got burned, they will tell you everything you need to know.
Every time you see them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like, I mean, that's a good underwriting network right there.
Right.
Matt.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing is I have the race now set up on RunSignUp, and the race pays me, and I pay the race. That way, I'm sure to get my money.
That's tougher to do.
I know,
You know,
but it works. It works really well.
We have
And I
some
love
people that do it. You know, generally the way you do that is because you're giving them a bunch of value-added services that they just, you know, they can't handle. Cities actually will do that quite often. Universities, any sort of governmental entities, they really can't handle money, which
They
doesn't
have
make
so
sense.
much red tape.
Yep.
So we do, one of our bigger events each year is we do a race for the little zoo. For the zoo, they get 4,000, no, couple thousand, go through the zoo. And that, all that city and state government bureaucracy, they don't know how to accept the money. So we don't like holding on to the money. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to get paid from revenue, from the registration revenue. I want it to go straight to them. And I think I've gotten a lot of that from you guys. You don't want to. You want to give us you want to give the race the money as quick as you can.
Yeah, because it actually creates, it's not even just a tax liability, you know, an accountant can help them do that fairly easily. It also means that if that person's a jerk and doesn't put on the race, that means, like, in our eyes,
Then I would become liable.
Yeah, I
I've
mean,
got all
not-
that money.
or not that we, you know, don't understand the situation, but it's like, well, you're the one that said that this was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So, one other thing I did want to kind of mention, I don't, is Scott Sutter in here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Scott is got 2 different things that we've been working on, and I can give you kind of the gory details of some of the reasons behind this. One, he's working on this product called Race Insure, and it's something for some races that can be really helpful. For about 1% of gross, they can be insured. So if the race is canceled for weather reasons, they actually have a policy to pull against. And there's some rules and stuff like that. But the other thing that he's been working on, and this is something that Tyler was asking about, is like, what type of insurance should I be carrying? And so he's actually a timer himself, and he's been helping some timers with, you know, liability type insurance, because that's something when you start dealing with cities. I was just dealing with MLB, and MLB's requirements for insurance is insane. I mean, like, you know, so this is some of the stuff that if your trucks were to get hit by a fire truck and smash into somebody's car or, you know, whatever, I've actually heard twice this year, someone's timing equipment got ran over by a fire truck. You know, like there was an emergency situation that went through the finish line and just destroyed everything. So it was like, well, who pays for that?
Who pays for the damage to the fire truck?
I don't know if the fire truck was damaged. I'm assuming.
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
So like I don't know, like I'm sure most of you guys carry general liability insurance, but if you're doing business with a hospital or a university, they may have different expectations.
Or city.
Yeah.
And some of the parks where you're holding events, they all do. They're city or municipal parks or state parks. They're all requiring those. So, I would say get with a good independent insurance agent. Really sit down with him and explain to him and make sure that he understands every aspect of what you're doing. So at first, when I first started talking to my guy, he's like, and we're timers, while we produce a few races, he's like, so you're selling a lot of beer and t-shirts at these events. And it's like, well, that's not quite exactly right. And I had to spend a little time with him and talk to him and said, really kind of walking through what we did. And so finally, because he's got to relay it to, he can talk to 10 or 20 different insurance companies. He's got to relay it to them and for them to understand what they're insuring. You should probably be up here talking about that, about all this, but.
We actually designed an insurance, we designed a timer specific program that removes any athletic exclusion from it, because in every general liability policy, there's an athletic exclusion. So if someone's participating or practicing for an event, an athletic event, there's an automatic exclusion in your general liability. So if in case someone gets hurt on your equipment during a race, and that exclusion, which is customarily tied into your general liability policy, you're not going to have coverage anyway. You might be paying for it, but technically you don't have coverage. So what we've done is we've moved that exclusion, and the minimum premium is $300. It's based off of sale, just for timing. Someone else's risk.
Well, and that's the way our insurance is based. It's based on our sales. That's the only way they can judge it, right? Is gauge it. They don't care about how many people it is. Because every race is going to be different. So it's all about sales. So we have to send in some reports. Really, I think we only do it once a year. So it's really not that big a deal.
Yeah.
I have a question on that. So you have insurance that actually covers the runners in the event?
So not so much for the event.
Because I've always heard that's what the
There's
waiver
event
of liability.
liabilities that you as a race director, or if you're hosting a race, that you have to buy for the event, because you're responsible for what's happening in between the start and finish line and the pre stuff that happens. We as race directors, when we put that hat on, because we wear both sometimes, as race timers, we're only responsible for collecting the finish time. That's it.
And the equipment that you set up.
And the equipment that we set up. So let's say someone gets hurt on the course, someone has a heart attack on the course, that's not our issue. It's the race director's issue, the race owner's issue. If someone trips on our equipment because we didn't set it up, or maybe it was impeding a runner, through the chute, and they trip on our equipment, technically they could come after us if they get hurt because we're negligent putting our equipment in their way. We have a truss falls on somebody, which happened just a few weeks ago in Texas. Somewhere a truss fell on somebody and killed somebody. That's where our insurance would come from for this time program. But we can't get it confused with event liability, because that's in between the starting line. We're just the finish line. So
No, I get that, but having both hats, so and this might be, you might have already answered this, but is there anything that covers the runners while they're running, and then as the timer, if we get them to name us as the additional insured,
So
isn't that a better protection also?
yeah, well, here's what I do. In my contracts that I use when I time someone else's race, in my contract, we list everything out. I make sure that they hold me as what's called an additional insured.
Right.
So this way, if in case, because they hold the liability insurance, right? They're buying the liability insurance in between. And I look at lawsuits regularly. Once a week, I get a lawsuit that comes across my, but not against timers, but it's more against everything else that I do in life. And they name everybody involved, and then they name John Doe, Company ABC, just in case they miss somebody. They name everybody. So if in case the race director gets sued, because they're going to get sued, or the race owner is going to get sued, or whatever, if they get sued first, I get covered underneath their insurance policy because they name me as initial insured. Now, I don't take their word for it. I ask for a certificate of insurance. and they send me a certificate of insurance that says, here's strategic, Southern New England Athletic Association down on the bottom, and I'm held as an additional insured.
Right.
This way, in case something happens, at least I have some sort of evidence that they did it, and I did my due diligence, so if I get deposed, I can say, well, listen, I asked for the evidence of insurance, it's all right here. So at least I look good, I put myself in a defensible position, if in case the worst case scenario does happen.
And you do that in addition to buying extra insurance?
I have my insurance for me, for my timer.
And that's for like professional negligence or?
Yeah, there's actually professional negligence there too, so if you mess up, our equipment turns off, we do something stupid during the race, and we miss 1,000 people, there's actually an errors and omissions coverage in there that would, if the race director comes after us. I actually had a race, one of my races, it's 130 laps, it's an indoor marathon. And I hired a timer to show up, and he timed the race, and halfway through, I have people flying from all over the country, international, that come in to run the race. Halfway through the race, his timing system broke. It just stopped. I had people that were halfway through a marathon, we didn't know where they were in lap count. So I probably ran 6 miles running with people, like, I don't know what happened, we're gonna figure this out, you know, so, and we ended up just figuring it out. But and luckily everybody was really cool about it. It was outside of my control, they understood that for the most part. But I could have turned around and I should have went back to the race director, to the race timer, because that was, I owned it, he just went home. I should have had him refund people that were affected. Now, had he had my insurance policy, that would have triggered, and then he could have actually had coverage for something like that. So to answer that partially. But yeah, there is also bodily injury and property damage coverage. So in case we're negligent for hurting someone or damaging someone else's equipment, that's what we're there for.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so, thanks.
What about workers' comp?
Yeah, that's more, it's state specific, but yeah, we do that too.
Yeah,
The timer program is more, I think it's the only thing that exists in the nation right now of what we were able to design and do. That's the unique part. Workers' comp is more anybody can do. But yeah, we do that too.
fair enough. Yeah, a lot of municipalities require that
But yeah, it's
from the timer.
state and federal law too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So this is exactly what I wanted to kind of dig into, because I think there's a lot of like kind of stuff under the covers. And the other one that Matt has so graciously said he wants to talk about is pricing. He says he'll
Sure, so, you know, you come to these things and keep in mind, we're from all over the country, right? So pricing is gonna vary a little bit, but yeah, I'll share with you. If you called me and said, hey, I want you to kind of race for me, I'm gonna give you a price, right? So you could all give me a prank call over the next 2 weeks and say, you're gonna bring a race to Kentucky and you want me to time it, give me a quote, or I can just take care of it here. So, early on, we started out, and I'll tell you, my pricing and what I see competitors. Early on, we first started out, we charged $4 per person, and we had a $1,500 minimum. So you didn't pay both, you didn't pay $1,500 and $4 per person, it was $4 per person with a $1,500 minimum. So I get paid $1,500 to show up, set up my equipment and everything. You know, obviously, you got a 4,000 person race or something, that was pretty good, so. And with a lot of the really small races that we were timing, that worked for them. We try to really be all-inclusive, so we don't charge extra for bringing a sound system. We don't charge you extra for a race clock. We don't charge extra for putting up our truss and, you know, hanging your banners on it or hanging our start and finish banners on it, stuff like that. We don't charge you for race bibs. If you've got your own custom race bibs, we'll use them. But race bibs are included. Safety pins are included. I don't want to bill somebody. I don't want to go back next week and bill somebody $8 for a $6 box of safety pins or whatever. And you know, that just goes to, in my opinion, that goes to good customer service. Is you as a timer, you're there to help solve problems for these guys, right? So just being totally self-sufficient, so nothing gets missed. That's kind of our job. So we started out at $4 per person, $1,500 minimum. I see a lot of people out in the market in our area in Kentucky. They're like $6.95 base fee, and then like $2 per runner. So that is on top of, so it's $6.95 and like $2 or $2.50 per runner. And so like, you know, obviously in Manhattan, it's gonna be higher than that. And then maybe in Alabama or somewhere, it was probably gonna be a little lower than that. But that kind of gives you some guidance. You know, if you live in a higher price area, or a lower price area.
What about marketing? Does that include marketing?
So, you know, when we started in this business, we really thought we would be able to drive traffic to events. And yes, so when we first got started, we would tell people, yeah, hey, we started building a email list, and we started sending out emails. We have our own Facebook page, we have our own website. We've got a pretty, well, we use RunSignUp calendar now, but we were building a calendar. We were making posts about races that we were working with, and we were trying to do that. And we really talked about that a lot. You know, hey, we're going to market your race, and we're going to bring runners to you. I don't know how many were. I was smart enough to say, I don't know how many I'll bring you. I'm not going to say I'm going to bring you. You know, come on with me, and I'm going to grow your race from 1,000 to 2,000. We'll market, and we'll do something. Well, we figured out we weren't very good marketers. So we kind of gotten away from that. I don't even really talk about it. Now, do we still do a lot of those things? Yes, we do. We still send out emails. We still have an active Facebook page. We talk about the races that we work with. In any way, you know, some races are really, really little, and we do a tiny little thing for them. And some races we do a whole lot for, but we give them all the same attention as far as when it comes to giving them mentions and things like that, about including them all in all of our messages that we send.
Does that fee also include like course management?
So when we do our contract, we hate doing course management.
I think we all the time do.
So it just takes time, right? It just takes time, and you know, you gotta do it. You can't do it the night before, you just gotta do it that morning, so it means you gotta get there an hour and a half or 2 hours early, right?
Or bring more people.
Or bring more people, right? People's always a problem, right? Buying equipment is easy, you know, you just write a check, right? You get more equipment. People's hard, you know, getting people, and I always talk about people. It's like, you know, I'm really not paying you for the work that you do. I'm paying you to get out of bed at 4 in the morning and show up. The rest of the work that you do, you're kind of doing that for free. I'm paying you to get out of bed and show up, right? But course management, that's one of those things that we'll put on the contract as optional. If you want us to mark your course, checkbox, there's the fee right beside it. You've checked it, you've signed it, you sent it back to us. So that's how we don't go out looking for that business. You know, when I'm talking to people about timing their race, we talk about it, but do you have somebody to do it? Does somebody know the course? Is somebody familiar with the course? Do you have a volunteer? Are you going to do it? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, now, I think you talked about like, we mark the course. Now we will, if it's a new race and you need a course or you've got an area, we'll help you design a course. And we don't really charge extra for that because I can pull up a Google map.
We pull it up on the computer, look at it, we'll help them. And
Yeah, I usually make like recommendation. If you're going to put together a course, first of all, here's a person that will certify the course. USA Track and Field has a list that you go through.
And we certify courses.
Okay.
Paul certified. This is Paul Upton, my partner.
Okay, yeah.
One of my partners.
But I mean, I would give recommendations. By the way, you know, don't have that on the highway because then you got to pay police and all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Making sure traffic's not crossing and stuff like that. Yeah, we look at all that kind of stuff. And then, you know, a big thing is I like to tell race directors that we're working with, hey, if you stumble upon something, if you're struggling with how do I do this or how do I do that, don't stumble over it for a week or two. Just call me. We've probably dealt with it. I can't sit here long enough with you and go through all the possible things that you might need. But as those come up, use us as a resource. So I like to kind of think about it as as a bank. You know, banks they want you to open an account. They want you to get your mortgage with them. They want you to have your direct deposit, and they want you to automatically pay 3 bills out of your account. So all those are touches. And the bank has figured out that the more touches that they can get, the more they can touch you, the less likely you are to leave, change banks. So I kind of like to think of our businesses that way. And so how many different things, how many different touches can we help them with? So we help them with online registration. We help answer their questions if they stumble on something. We help to design course. You know, we do their timing, we do their results, we do video. You know, all those extra little things makes you sticky, and then they don't wanna leave. They wanna stay with you. Yeah.
I also have another question. I think it's Jay, right? So you're talking about, I just heard this recently, I didn't even know this is true, that if you have an amplifier there, and now you say you provide us, if you're playing music, that you have to, there might be a fee for it?
ASCAP or BMI.
Yeah.
You
gotta
know,
buy that license.
yeah, and we're licensed. We went ahead and bought the license, or we got a solution. We use a solution through Pandora, and so that makes us legal.
It actually goes to the responsibility of the event director, though. Whoever's
You could argue all that kind of stuff all day long. It's pretty inexpensive. So my partner, I would have thrown the notices in the garbage, maybe. Don't do what I say. On that. I probably would have thrown those notices in, but he was getting those notices from BMI and fees and all this kind of stuff, and so he wanted to get the license and get legal and everything, so we did. You know, over a course of a year, it doesn't amount to much. You could say there's provisions for nonprofits.
There's 6 exceptions. I took them to court in one.
Okay.
So you could beat them. If you use less than a certain number of speakers, if it's a nonprofit, but in the statute, there's 6 exceptions that you can get around it. So, and I do a real major race, and they come after every year, and every year they lose.
And what about radio station, if you put a radio station on the same
That's
rules?
Well, radio station's actually okay. If
Yeah,
you
the radio
broadcast a
station's
radio
got a license.
station, because the radio station's got a license.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right. They do.
Yeah.
They have to have one.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you bring an amp and you play that.
You just tune in at a local station,
You're okay.
you're fine.
Okay.
You're fine.
Yeah, how much does
But there's ways of beating it.
Pandora thing cost?
I put out.
$30 a month.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about $360 a year. $355 actually
Yeah.
What for,
for the license.
For the license.
for,
BMI.
okay.
You can buy it from BMI, you can buy it from ASCAP, and then there's other solutions out there that are licensed, then you just buy it from them, and then we just turn on a Pandora station, we plug in a phone, we turn on a Pandora station, play whatever we want.
I personally would prefer the race director to play it, bring music, and they're responsible for what's being played, but.
You know, yeah, there's ways around it, you could say, hey, I'm renting, like I said, we try to be all inclusive, but you could put in there that you're renting them the sound system for $1 or $10 or some nominal fee. And then it's on them, but they gotta plug their phone in, they gotta plug in their iPod, something like that.
Right.
They know their crowd, they know what's
Crowd,
named,
Right, and then when I turn on Pandora, I mean, I try to kind of feel the crowd and put what they want. I don't play BC Boys all the time, every now and then.
We've got like,
Yeah, we got 10 more minutes or something. I like to get multi-year contracts. You don't have to go through, do I always get them? No. Try to get 3-year deals. And then you don't have to go through that whole process of negotiating that contract every year. You just know, all right, I'm gonna do this race again for the next 2 years, this year and 2 more years. if you were to ever sell your business or have somebody wanting to buy your business, that would make your business more valuable. You know, you've got that recurring revenue, it's contractual recurring revenue. Your business would be more valuable. They could count on that recurring revenue. Yeah, Kevin?
Paying timers.
Paying timers. Oh, that's a tough question, Kevin.
Was it a question?
It was a tabletop.
It was a statement.
It was a statement.
Okay.
Tabletop. Go ahead.
Paying timers. So we pretty much there's 3 partners, so we're all 3, some more proficient than others. But we can all 3 time races. So we don't so much need timers, but we need helpers. So kind of our standard fee is you show up, you help us at a 5K, you're really only there 3 hours or something. So we pay like a helper $75. And then as you become, you know, let's face it, the first couple times somebody shows up to help you, really not much help, right? Maybe, but you've got to get through that. That's a cost of bringing somebody on and getting that help. But time a simple 5K, probably $250 for a timer, for a proficient timer that you know he's going to pick up the gear, he's going to put it in his vehicle, he's going to show up on race site and set stuff up properly. Going to interact with the race director, answer their questions, be able to do what he needs to do on race day, post results, pack everything up, come home, and answer inquiries. So whoever times the race, they get forwarded the my time's not right emails, in theory.
But I remember.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a big variance. I mean, I know of people that pay timers over $1. So it's somewhat market, like, and right now, it's really, really hard to get anybody to show up. The job market-
Everybody's got a job, right?
Yeah, so, and the other thing that I will tell people is that there's many, many race timers who have made poor decisions of taking people who are very confident and creating competitors. So every time that you have that interaction where you think, oh, well, that guy's trying to get one over on me, just remember, they could become your competitor for $10,000. So that's something to keep in mind, something that's happened. Well, a company RaceWire bought a company in North Carolina, and out of that, 4 brand new timing companies got created.
Yep.
So it's something to keep in mind. I don't know how you deal with it, right? Because, you know, if that person shows up and does a good job, and they're going to come back again next year, well, that race director might actually have an affinity to that person.
Well,
that company,
that's the person they're seeing on race day.
yeah.
The
And
trust.
Yeah.
So when RaceWire bought that company in North Carolina, well, those guys that broke off, well, each one of them had 30 or 40 races they were personally kind of handling, like Matt said, because they were proficient and they were good people. Well, guess who they're calling? They were texting saying, hey man, you gonna time my race again? Oh, actually, I got my own company. Boom, race gone.
Now,
Gone.
so that timer, so when we send that timer, he's not really had any contact with that race leading up to the race. He shows up, he's hired gun on race day. So I think that's one way we try to protect ourselves. So we don't just say, okay, this is your race, I want you to stay in touch with them throughout the year, and you prepare, you get their data, you call them and talk to them about any changes for this year. We do all that. So our timer is only race day. Yes?
So we've had races complain about that. In this last year, we've expanded a bit, more tired timers, and when myself and my husband, who are the face of we don't show up on race day, we've had researchers. So
Well,
somebody else.
And that's a part of growing. And so we let our race director know who is going to come on race day. And I don't say they don't have any contact, but they'll have very limited contact, just just a day or two. I'm gonna show up, the race starts at 8 o'clock, I'll be there at 6. And the start's at that fountain, right? Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the only thing is that, the hard part is that you have a 200-person race, and you've been doing it for the past 7 years, and then the same weekend, you now have a 2,000-person race. That's a problem, because that 200-person race is used to seeing you, and now you're sending somebody else. So, like, setting the expectation that they may change is difficult, but I don't know what else you're gonna do.
It just goes.
We jokingly said that we were gonna charge an appearance fee. They also want us to go.
No, what I do is I call the race and say, hey, look, I'm not being there myself, I'm sending somebody. By the way, they've worked with me for 5 years, they know what they're doing and whatever. Yeah, that usually comforts them.
They think you're sending the B team.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
No matter how you sell it, they're gonna
Right.
see that.
They think you're sending the B team, and nobody wants to be. I'm the B team. Truth be told.
Get plenty of calls from that on radio.
It's usually those first few races in the spring. I'm just rusty, right?
Kevin, did you still have a question?
I was just gonna say, I know in our contract, we list down who the timer's gonna be.
We rarely know by the time
I
they're gonna
just
come
we're
back.
penciled in to begin with, and we use, one of our staff, we use a team up calendar, it's free.
Mhm.
And put it on there on the whole year as to, who's assigned to what race.
Mhm.
And again, I don't know if I've heard other people at other conferences talk, and they say they pay their timers like twice minimum wage and stuff like that. I know what we do, and.
Good luck getting somebody.
Good luck.
Whatever the race fee is, we give the timer 2/3 of the money. We get a third. After
Wow.
to make them wanna fight over who's gonna time the race. So they are getting up early.
Yeah.
But I also heard somebody else say, all right, we also do it that if something gets damaged at the race, the timer pays for 2/3 of the repair. So they're gonna keep those computers up and the timing boxes.
Is that person an employer or a
They're
contractor?
1099, but if you start putting all the restrictions on, are you making them an employee? That's a big question. And how are you
I would
dealing
argue
with
that-
Kentucky tax? That's another question I wanted to ask.
Okay, we'll get to the tax in a second. I would argue that, your timer cannot be a 1099.
Right.
Because I can't remember them always, but if you tell them when, where, when they have to do a job, a task, where they have to do the job, if you provide them with the tools and equipment, there's some of those, you probably know, there's probably 4 or 5 things, right? The test.
State has a test that
They have to do it
pass
for other
to
people
qualify for
besides you
contractor.
also.
Well, that's another thing that can help them pass the test to be a 1099.
Right.
Yeah. So I would argue your timers they're really employed, and that's how we pay ours. We withhold taxes and do the whole thing. We've only got a few, so we stay below having to provide health insurance and stuff like that. Sales tax. So that just happened in Kentucky on July 1. We have to now start collecting sales tax on race registration fees. And obviously RunSignUp has the tool to do it, you turn it on, but you get the money, but you get all the reports so that you can now remit that. So there's a whole bunch of people in Kentucky that now have to get a tax number and start remitting those taxes quarterly and filling out those reports quarterly.
Yeah, it's gonna be a nightmare, so expect over the, if you're really, really bored, you can research Wayfair versus South Dakota. It was a recent Supreme Court decision, and it's going to change sales tax. I would say, my gut says that half the states are gonna charge sales tax for participatory events in the next 12 months.
Well, Kentucky's a follow-along state, so they've seen it in some other state has done it, and they're like, all right, we want a piece of that. They don't have any original ideas.
And it's gonna be really, to give you an idea for, Kentucky really put the hammer down on this. it's 6%. And like it's gonna get real fast because the what's gonna happen is in the beginning they're gonna badger you guys, and then what's gonna happen is they're gonna badger us. And when it becomes our obligation to make sure that you're complying with it, it's not gonna be, oh well, we're a nonprofit in Kentucky. That's irrelevant.
Yeah, Kentucky, it doesn't matter, you know, all these nonprofits have been used to not paying any taxes. But what they don't understand is in this scenario, they're not the buyer.
Right.
The individual is the buyer and they're not tax exempt.
Yeah.
Um,
And we're gonna be doing a lot of education on this. You guys will hate it. And like I foresee by this point next year, a large number of states, when you create a race, we're gonna give them notice that, you know, you're required to collect sales tax. We're enabling that. If you have an exemption, because again, each state may have different rules, then you'll have to give us the documentation for the exemption so that if we get audited and say, hey, such and such race is this, we can say, well, you know, in fact, based off the rules of the state, they're tax exempt. So it's gonna be something that's gonna affect everybody in this room equally.
But Brian, is it, the tax is gonna be liable to the people that are on whose name are on the payment account, right?
Correct. The timers are gonna be the people that catch it just like we catch it. And that, what the heck, why do I need to charge sales tax? And so we all have to become experts because just like
Right.
bibs and t-shirts, people ask us questions and this is gonna be another one of those things. Because these are like micro businesses, right? Like they're the smallest businesses in the world.
Right.
So we're the people that are telling them, like, look, you really don't want to get, like, even $10,000. They can come back for $600.
yeah.
That's meaningful to them.
So wait, okay, so now, who pays is the race?
The
Yeah, the
likely the participant's going to be paying the sales tax.
Yeah,
If the
yeah,
race
right,
fails
they
to
pay-
collect it, then,
right.
then they're going to have to pay it.
The race itself,
Correct.
who's getting all the money,
Right.
we don't, the
No,
timer doesn't have to.
No, but we need to be aware of what the law is so that we can recommend to the race, hey, I had a meeting with the race director just last week, and they were just, I was trying to tell them about this tax, the sales tax. Oh, no, we're tax exempt, and, yeah, we don't need that. I was like, no, the ruling is, you know, and I had to explain to them, it's the participant that's paying the tax.
And I got it from a tax attorney that, I mean, he straight up said, I thought there was a way to wiggle out.
And I talked to a tax attorney.
Okay, so then my other question is, out of state, somebody out of state registers.
Still doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. They're gonna come to Kentucky to do the
Wherever
event.
wherever
the race
the
is in
event
Kentucky,
is,
service
that's
provided.
the tax.
Yeah. One other thing on your tax though, so our services in Kentucky are not being taxed. So when we send a bill for $2,000 for timing that race, we don't have to add tax to that.
Or you're not cutting their grass.
Yeah, so we're going to,
Yeah, so under that, or fixing their car, or fixing their air conditioner at home, you know, all that labor is now taxable now. But, I thought we would be taxed. I thought that was gonna be taxed, but we're not.
So we have to clear the room out.
Right.
They're trying to get us out of here. Look at these people. They're ravenous.
They're like the vultures.
So, did you guys like this? Can we do it again next year?
Yeah.